Hey everyone, Michigan here. Welcome back to the channel and another episode of Caller Concepts. In this video, I'm going to be going over the different types of coverage as a follow-up to the coverage versus control video, as well as how to do a fully detailed strat sketch that includes all the coverage types, movements, enemy movements, and optional movements. So let's jump right into it. First off, we have control. And if you watched the previous video, you will have seen this, or not the previous video, but the coverage versus control video, but we're going to recap anyway. Control is any area of the map that you physically have. You own it, and the area in front of it, you can physically stop enemies from climbing into that area or pushing out of it. You need to have ability to physically block the enemies to have full control. If you cannot block the enemies, it's not full control. It'll be one of these other ones, which we'll go over in a second. Coverage means you can stop or you can spot the vehicles, but that's all you can do. You can watch their movements, you can watch them go to that position, but you can do nothing about it. Influential coverage. This means you cannot physically stop the enemies from going wherever they're going. However, you have the firepower to have an impact on their movements. So let's say you have a couple of mediums on a ridge. They can shoot at the heavies below, but if those heavies are going full steam, they won't really be able to stop them or make any sort of game-changing play. Another option would be an E3 holding a corner. That's influential coverage. The E3 cannot stop the push. However, they can do a decent amount of damage on it. Take, for example, Banana Road on mines. That E3, if you put one E3 there, sometimes when you put two vehicles, a lot of times they get overrun, but they can influence the game there by taking a lot of HP out and maybe even finishing a vehicle off. Double coverage, not influential. This means that you have two separate groups overlooking one area. This would mainly be a control group and a light tank. So let's say you have an EBR spotting an area where heavies are overlooking. The heavies can shoot that area and they can spot it, but so can the EBR. So that area is not fully reliant on that heavy group or that light tank. One of them can cover it. However, if the heavies or the control group backs off, it's going to turn into just a coverage slot. Not used that often, however, it's important to recognize that area of the map. Double coverage influential. This means that you have two solid control groups a lot of the time. Maybe you have some mediums and you have some heavies on a ridge. Now, you could also say that, two hash marks of red is a double control, which means you have heavies and overwatching heavies in a valley, maybe on an L, and both of them can cover it. It's just so rare, it's not worth putting in. So you have mediums on a ridge who can influence it, but you also have heavies who can physically stop it. This usually means you have a crossfire on this area. Let's take a look at the arrows as well. We have initial deployment. This is going to be your call. Wherever you want the mediums, heavies, tanks, tank destroyers, light tanks, wherever you want your forces to go immediately as that countdown timer hits 0. Second move, this is going to be your second area you want to take out. Maybe this is the next section of the map. We talked about breaking the map down into different pieces and taking chunks of it at a time. We also have the third move, and then the final move. You don't need to use all three of these on your call. You could even use one. You could just use one. You can use two. Maybe you only have 3 total. You don't necessarily need to use them, but they're here in case you want to do it. I would not recommend doing any more than this because it clutters the map to the point where it's almost unreadable. We have the same color arrows as optional movements. Let's say you have an initial deployment. You want the TD to go to the hill on the left side of the cap. However, you also understand that sometimes the enemies call and they'll go the other direction. So what you're going to do is you're going to put an optional green arrow that maybe the TD goes to the other side instead. You have to remember with these strat sketches, a lot of this is to get your thought process in order so that you really know and understand your call and your map. And this way you can see where your weak points are quite easily. We also have predicted enemy movement. Just red arrows and dotted line, nothing else. All you're doing is predicting their initial deployment. You don't want to do any more than that because hopefully if your call goes as planned, the enemies will do what you want them to do because of the way you've set the call up. So enough of this. If you want to take a screenshot, my mouse is out of the way. I'll leave it for a few seconds. Alright, if you've taken a screenshot or whatever, great. If not, the video's always here. Let's take a look at a real-world example. Now, a little bit messy, I had to do some corrections here, but this is a mines call that we actually do quite often. And I'm sure a lot of you recognize it. We're attacking from the south. Arguably, this could be a defense too. We did change one thing up. We dropped a medium for a light, and I think we have an extra heavy as well. So let's take a look here. We have our initial calls, all the green. We have the tank destroyer going to the hill. We have a light going out to the island. And we have the heavies coming to the mid and the mediums going to the hill. Now, note that there isn't a line solely for the mediums. That just adds to the clutter. We know it's a green arrow. That way we know that the mediums are going there immediately. There's no pause. Let's take a look at these next arrows. We have a blue arrow. This is second stage. We want the mediums to go around the side of the hill. Now, everything is very specific here. All the arrows should be as close to real, exactly where you want the path of your vehicles to go. Now, note that this goes over the castle into an impassable area. It's the start and the end is what's important. You don't want to drag your arrow through text or as many arrows as possible. You want to keep it as clean looking as possible. So everybody gets the idea. Nobody shouldn't think that you have to go up into the castle to get around there. Now, note we also have optional movements. We have two dashed arrows here. We have the heavies and the mediums. Now, sometimes on this map, the mediums are able to start to overwhelm ours. And what starts to happen is the heavies become at risk of being outflanked. So what we do is we push the mediums off the hill along with the heavies. Note, 2 blue arrows means it happens at the same time. Coverage, the different color arrows, if there's multiple of the same type, that means that is stage 2. So if the mediums were to overwhelm us, our second option would be to push our mediums and our heavies off the hill. And we've actually done that, and I've posted that video. And take out this area here. Now, while we're in this area, you can kind of see the dashed or the dotted lines here for the heavies. Now, note that I have not put every single enemy medium. I haven't put 15 tanks here. I've only put 4 mediums and 4 heavies. It's theoretical. I believe that there will be vehicles here. You don't want to speculate on the whole enemy team because then your call will become reliant on it. I don't know. Maybe they push tanks underneath or they push them out here. I don't actually know that. Now that we're up here, this is going to be the main portion of the battle, is where you want your coverage and control setups to be. So let's take a look at what we have. We have blue, light blue. If we go back, that is going to be coverage. If you remember, coverage means we can spot movements, but that's it. This light tank has good vision in this area, and just because it's just this area doesn't mean he can spot out further. Just remember that. That means this area solely is just coverage. If mediums push out here, we are not going to be able to really have any stopping power on them. Let's take a look at what we have in the middle. We have sole red, just red. It's a small area. That's going to be control. These heavies can stop their heavies from pushing over. Maybe they lose, but that is going to be a face-to-face engagement. So we have full control here. What do we have in this area? We have red with red and blue hash. That's going to be right here. Double coverage influential. The heavies have the coverage in here. They can physically stop enemies coming out of this area. The mediums have the influential part. They cannot really stop vehicles from moving up this area because they're on a ridge. Now,
wake up.
Keep in mind, one of you, or somebody might say, well, the heavies can't stop them. It's not going to be exact. It's just to get your call in order so that you understand where you have coverage. You have a great crossfire here from the heavies and the mediums. This area, we have blue with red. That's going to be influential coverage. These mediums can shoot into this area, but can they stop 15 heavies or even 5 heavies from coming around? They cannot. So that's this main area. You can see as a third stage, we have the mediums dropping off. Again, this is in an ideal world. Dropping off and pushing to the enemy cap. We also have an alternative route where they come underneath. We also have an alternative route where the light can come over to this area if they so choose. That doesn't mean the caller can't move them up before. But my personal thought is maybe they have a medium out here, and then our mediums are able to take care of it and whatnot. Finally, as the last stage, we have our heavies pushing down, presumably to stop theirs from coming up into the cap circle. So I hope you took something out of this. I know it's a lot to look at, and it's kind of complicated, but again, it's mainly for you to understand your strat. Now I have multiple calls that I can make out of this based on what happens around me in this call. And this is just one example, and it didn't even take that long. It took about maybe 10 to 15 minutes to finish this off, if that, mainly because I knew the call already. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. And if you have any recommendations or changes you would make, let me know. If this is something you'd like to see more of, let me know as well. And I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.